So I think we are live and on the internet. Hello, everybody. Welcome, Internet World. Uh, Thank you for joining us on Smart Water Wednesdays. I have Michelle and Joe with me for the conversation that we're going to have today about station configurations. That will start at the top of the hour. And so take a few minutes, get logged in. We're just going to let everybody get comfortable. I'm going to talk to my co-host and my special guest here for a few minutes. And then right at the top of the hour, we'll get started with the official content. So thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Coffey. I'll be the host today. And I'd like to introduce my old friend, Joe Jackson. Joe Jackson, how are you, buddy?
Doing great, Ben. How are you doing today?
Good to see you. Thanks for making time this morning.
Yeah, of course.
I am delighted to announce, and I hope it's okay that I announce, that last time we talked, I learned that you're a grandpa.
I know. Feeling really old, let me tell you.
Well, you look great for grandpa. You don't look like my grandpa looked. I'll tell you that much. My grandpa was never a triathlete, though. So
Yeah, we got to keep up with my boys. 5 boys at home, and we finally our first grandbaby is a little girl. Super exciting.
oh, so there is females in that DNA chain somewhere.
Somewhere I wasn't able to find it, but evidently.
Well, that is awesome. How is being a grandpa going? How are the new parents?
You know what? After crazy days of water management and work in general, it's nice when my boy comes over with his wife and our little granddaughter, and the world just changes. It's holding her in my arms is seems like nothing else really matters. It's awesome.
Oh, Michelle, I did have one thing that I wanted to share with you. Just a second here. Did you ever see anything as adorable as this? Like, this is Joe Jackson with his grandpa face on. Like, this is absolute satisfaction in life.
That's awesome.
This is the face of a life well spent right there.
Amen. Priorities in order.
Absolutely. Brings it all into focus, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
Makes it all worthwhile. So that is amazing, Joe. I'm so happy for you and your lovely family. It's fun to watch it continue to grow after all these years.
Yes, it does. And it will continue to grow. I'm sure with 5 boys. I'm sure there's more than just one.
I'm sure this isn't the last grandbaby. It's just the first.
That's right.
Well, congratulations. And before we go any farther, let's introduce our guest for today. Michelle, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Michelle is an irrigation and landscape contractor on one of our major national accounts, and has a lot of landscape credentials that I just learned about. Michelle, can you tell me a little bit about your education?
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's degree in landscape management from Brigham Young University, and minor in business and a minor in Chinese. So
nice. So you can speak Chinese to your little plants?
Yes.
Nice. So landscape management, tell me about that. Like, what was, is there an emphasis there? Is it a broad thing? Do you focus on irrigation or plant health or soil science, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's about a third design and a third of the horticulture science, but focused on landscape in particular. We don't go over like fruit production or vegetable production. And then a third like business classes. So it's targeted because in the past they had a horticultural program and then did studies and surveys from past graduates and felt like the growing part of the industry that would provide for their graduates better was in the landscape department. Nice. So yeah.
So when you're managing landscapes, tell me about your role. Are you on exclusively the water management side, or do you provide other services as well?
I provide other services. So I'm a quality assurance specialist. So I work for a nonprofit organization, and we employ a lot of vendors to take care of our properties. And so I help support those vendors in any way they need, from just general maintenance of the landscape to irrigation. So I definitely support them with the WeatherTRAK clocks that we use. Yeah, just a broad range of helping things go better.
Nice. Does that include holding contractors to spec and to expectation? Are you quality assurance in that manner?
Yes. Yep.
I imagine that is a big job. Is that what most of your job entails, is just making sure that everything got done right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's working with them and making sure that they understand and remember our expectations. And I also work with other people in our department and helping them, when they manage the overall properties, help them understand the role of landscape in that and what is best for their landscape, so that we're all one cohesive team rather than
Love
like,
it.
yeah. So
That makes great sense to me. Joe, do you have any questions for Michelle?
You know what? I am lucky enough to work with Michelle weekly and enjoy our conversations and the support I'm able to provide. So, I'm good.
All right. Let's see. So you were telling me about a study that you guys did that was showing savings on your sites. Tell me the details of what you said there. You had statistics for me, and my water nerds always love statistics.
Yeah, so we've done a couple studies just to see, as we've implemented WeatherTRAK controllers across our sites, if it's a good use of our money, right? So,
Amen.
So over time, we discovered that our average controller on our average site, just a WeatherTRAK controller and no flow sensor or a master valve, pays for itself in 1 to 2 years. So that's really exciting, because sometimes those that are in charge of approving the budget and installing things don't like the initial upfront cost of the WeatherTRAK. So it's really exciting to be able to be like, no, like, this is worth your money. And
worth
then
the investment for sure.
Yes, it is. And then when we do install the flow sensor and the master valve, it takes about 2 to 4 years to pay off. But obviously that's well worth it.
So
And that includes materials and installation, right, Michelle?
Yes.
Another national account that I won't name, but has thousands of sites, said that on average, they gave it in a percentage. They said on average, when you implement just the smart water, they are saving better than 30% on their annual irrigation usage, right? They're saving 30%, 30+% of their annual irrigation water. And then when they add flow sensing to it, it increases that average by an additional 10 to 20%. Now, to your point, there is a cost involved in all of that hardware, so it extends the ROI, but it inevitably pays for itself in a very short time when you talk about return on investment stuff.
Yeah.
So, Shell, I know that another tool that has helped you on your sites is identifying changes that are made that had a significant impact on landscaping. And I think you have a story to tell us about that and the cost of mismanagement.
Yeah. So our organization was developed a little differently to begin with, and we didn't have anyone tracking the WeatherTRAK controllers and changes. And so there was a landscape that was a new install, and we had a community member who shut off our water for 2 weeks. And when we found it, the landscape was super struggling, turned the water back on, and they shut it off again. And we found it another 2 weeks later, and the whole thing was dead. So it cost about 180 grand to replace the entire landscape. And
Just tripped over my microphone. Did you say 180 grand?
Yeah. So in the process of that replacement taking shape, we the organization did hire someone that would help manage our water, and they were curious and pulled reports and looked at things, and sure enough, we had a flow sensor on that site that the vendor had turned off. So had the flow sensor been turned on, they would have been notified that the water wasn't working immediately, and we would have saved the whole landscape. So that would have just saved the landscape initially. And then second of all, had we had a water manager when this was going down and assigning like responsibility, we would have caught that and not had to pay for this landscape ourselves. We would have held those that were responsible accountable. So it's a testimony of why we need to use our flow sensors and why we need water managers. So
my favorite kind of story. Those are my two favorite points. Any story that ends in those 2 points, I'm all for. Yeah. I never like to relish in 180 grand loss story, but
yeah,
at least there is an upside.
Yeah, exactly. It's always good to learn from mistakes. So
absolutely, and learn how
we paid a lot for that one, so we better dang learn from it.
Nice. Awesome.
Yes.
And I've seen your sites. They are beautiful. You
thank you.
One of the most beautiful landscapes I have ever seen. So all right, we are coming in on the top of the hour, so let us get started. All right. First of all, hi everybody, welcome. I'm Ben Coffey. I am the host of Smart Water Wednesdays. Today we are going to talk about saving station configurations. And this is, I'm excited to have this conversation. I looked through all my materials. This is a feature that I have never highlighted in all of my years doing this. So this is one of the unheralded features of the WeatherTRAK world, but it definitely will pay dividends and save you time if you know how to use it. I have with me my friend Joe Jackson, who, if you were on the pre-show or on the pre-game show, you learned that Joe Jackson is a new grandpa. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Ben. Glad to be here.
Here is the main event. We are here to celebrate the water management accomplishments of Michelle Lorimer and her nonprofit organization that she represents. Michelle, thanks for joining us today.
Of course, happy to be here.
It's so nice to have you. I have to thank you for today's topic. Today's topic comes as it started as a request from you to Joe and Joe to me. And I started looking through our materials and looking for information on our station configurations, which was sadly lacking. Like, this is something that only our advanced users use, and maybe it's because only our advanced users even know that it exists. So hopefully today's conversation helps you and helps all my water nerds out there learn a little bit about how they can more efficiently use the system. So thank you for that. And we are going to jump right in, if you don't care. Anything to build before I zip on? All right, let me share my screen again. Share my screen. Okay. So we are going to talk today about the configurations tool. And this is something that is on your WeatherTRAK.net. It's the WeatherTRAK Central feature set that you're going to look at here. And it's something that's been there for years. And it's kind of hiding in plain sight. You might not have even noticed it. But it is a time saver that will help you recall annual changes that you might want to revisit. So we'll talk about why you would do that. We'll talk about what those tools, that station configurations tool looks like and how it's used. I'll give you some examples, and then we'll delve into the real heart of the conversation with Michelle and Joe, who have great examples on how they are using this feature. Okay. And so when I talk about how I use the station configurations tool, it really kind of boils down to why would I need to save my station configurations, right? And the best example I have is when we talk about auto mode, or the automated by WeatherTRAK, the famous weather-based irrigation that WeatherTRAK provides. We talk about that being a scientific irrigation cycle, and also we talk about that being the science of maintaining already established plant life, right? It is the science of keeping your green grass green. And so this auto mode is awesome for 90% of the work that your irrigation system does. However, in the life of a landscape, there are certain tasks that require overwatering, right? There are times when you want to step in as the water manager and say, I want what I want. And I want to be able to depend on it. I want to go to bed tonight knowing that every station did what I expected it to do, no adjustments to run times or frequencies or any of that kind of stuff. And the best example I have of that is overseeding, right? A lot of my users, especially in the South, do an annual overseed, replenish their grasses with different kinds of grass. And to germinate that seed, they need to override the stations that they're overseeding. They need to go in and set a user-defined schedule and say, these stations need my own irrigation. And they set it up and they run it for a couple of weeks, and the seeds germinate and do their thing, and then they're back to auto mode. The configurations tool is especially good at this kind of management, right? Instead of having to go through and identify which stations those are every year, as long as you do it the first time, you can save your configuration. So when you go through and set up the stations that you need to override for overseeding, for example, you can save that configuration and recall it next year and the year after, right? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every year. Does that sound right, Joe Jackson? Anything to build on that?
It does. I mean, and I've got other use cases that I'm sure I'll have a chance to jump in on, but for what you're saying, that's spot on. Once you have the controller programmed, whether it's for established irrigation and it is your dialed in program, or if it is establishment for annual color or overseeding or whatever you need to take it off of automated for, this configuration tool rocks. It saves you so much time.
Yeah. And I am thank you for not giving away my use cases, because I'm saving that for after. So I swear I will give you a chance to tell that awesome story.
We're good.
Michelle, anything you want to add before we move on?
Yeah, so an organization that I've worked for in the past, like Joe said, we use it all the time for our annual plant establishment. So we plant in the spring and the fall, and we have lots of gardens and are changing controllers a lot during that time. So
that's the site that I think is the most beautiful site in all the world. Just like edible landscapes and different colors and flora and fauna from all different places. It's gorgeous. It is. Thanks. I can't say enough. In fact, if you looked at the intro slide, that garden behind Michelle on my intro slide was from that site. All of that color was actually Michelle's garden in live and beautiful color. All right, so I am going to now go to a quick demo, and we'll talk about the station configurations tool. We're going to start here at WeatherTRAK Central, or WeatherTRAK.net, and you will log in with your own username and password. Every user should have their own account set up. And so when you log in, this will be a sales demo. I don't have anybody's controllers on here except the corporate demo controllers. But I log in and we'll land on the homepage. But the conversation we want to have today happens here on the Smart Irrigation tab and on the program page. Okay, so we are going to where all of your controller programming happens on WeatherTRAK.net. Okay, and we are going to use my Meadowview HOA standard irrigation controller demo. And what I want to highlight starts right here, right at the top of the page. This configurations tool is what we are here to talk about. And like I said, hiding in plain sight. At the top of the program page, you might have seen it 100 times and never used it. But what this does is it allows you to save configurations. So if I wanted to go in and make a change, like if I wanted to do overseeding or planting new flowers or whatever, I could go in and take my current configurations, right? And that is for all of these menus. Most of the time, I'm going to talk about station settings, but this applies to the entire program page. So if you want to restore start times and water windows, we can do that, or whatever the case may be, right? We're going to lean on those auto mode settings as kind of the example, just to be clear. But here I have all of my stations programmed, and each one has a bunch of different variables, right? And so when I switch this from auto mode to user mode, I want to have all of this quick and easy to recall and restore. And that's what this configurations tool is all about. So first of all, we go in and we view configurations. So it says, all right, this is the way to recall them. And if I look at this, you can see I've done this demo a bunch of times. In fact, I've got an overseeding example. Up here, I have a gardens example. So everything that we've talked about keeps coming up. And if I pull any of those configurations up, it will restore the settings on the program page to whatever configuration I have stored. So if I wanted to do overseeding, I'd select my overseeding program, and then I would hit view settings. And it would load all of this overseeding program, a very detailed look at what stations are getting overridden, what the station programming for every station is. So yeah, I've now got no stations in auto mode. All of my stations are overridden into the user programs or user defined programs, right? That's what the overseeding is all about. And so I just recalled that. Now in this state, this hasn't touched the controller. Now I'm just looking at it, right? And so I can go through and scroll and look for the right configurations and test everything. It doesn't actually get loaded into the controller until you hit save and send. When you hit save and send, it will download that configurations package, and everything will be the way that you expect it to be. Okay, so I think that's good for step one. Joe, anything to build on that?
So something I would add real quick is, and you kind of alluded to this when you pulled up your configurations, is that you can have any number of configurations to meet any specific reprogramming need for your site. So you can do save configuration, but you also have that ability to go through, and what I like to say is someone messed with my controller when they weren't supposed to, and I know the programming was still good on Friday when I went home, and you can look up configurations as of a date setting. So one of my stories I like to tell when I train on this with my customers is I had a customer call me and they said, Joe, someone changed everything on my controller. It is going to take me hours to reprogram it. And I said, well, when was the programming good last? And they said, well, I didn't have this problem Friday. And I said, well, go back to Friday, pull up Friday's programming, view it, see if that everything is accurate.
Friday, date and time, right? So you can go into, time. I'm saying August 4th, whatever.
Whatever time.
10 a.m., whatever, right? You go back to exactly when you knew that it was right. And then you view the settings as of that date and time, right? And that will change that will go back into the history. WeatherTRAK is saving your configuration every hour and can recall any configuration that you have in the saved cloud.
Yeah, and like Ben said, you bring it to this point and you're just viewing it. You have not sent it down to the controller. You can validate, is this what I want my programming to be? You see what the date and time is if you pull it up as of a time and date configuration, or you view it as of a saved configuration. But until you hit that button that Ben's right next to, send a controller now, it's just
it also
view
works over here either way.
Or save and send, the top bottom of the screen, either way. Yeah. And it's great because whether you're intentionally making changes to the controller or you have a helper that's making changes. Now, in this case, Ben, I got a call back from the customer because the next thing I had them do was check the change history report, and they discovered it was them that changed it.
Aha!
They were on the wrong controller making a whole bunch of changes. And it's okay because they were able to reprogram it within seconds.
Yeah, and usually my sequence is opposite, right? Usually when I'm working with customers, we'll pull that report first. We'll look back and we'll say, when did this mistake happen, right? We can just look at that controller settings change history report, and it will give you the date and time of every change event. And we'll just go in and pull the configurations right before the bad change happened.
Correct. Yeah, and that's what I usually do too. In this case, they're kind of freaking out. I'm like, it's okay. We can just go to the configuration and you're fine. And let's find out who did it.
Absolutely. Michelle, anything to build on that conversation?
Yeah, for sure. So I recently had an experience where we switched from a install contractor maintaining the site to our maintenance contractor maintaining the site. And I got a frantic call about everything being dead and things have changed and
no! The sky is falling.
They're like, you need to change it back now. And it was super easy for me to go in, and I pulled the change report like Ben was talking about, and I know exactly when the changes were made, and I go back to right before that, and I just use the date on the configuration and then save and send, and we're back in business. And it was helpful because you really can't be like a forensic scientist, so I can go back and reconstruct from that change report and knowing which dates, like, okay, I know exactly like what this new landscape watered at this time, and I know what this new landscape watered at this time, and just go back and see the whole history. And it's always really cool to be like, no, I know exactly what happened.
I know exactly what happened.
I know exactly what happened.
Here comes the bus. Look out.
Yeah, I really like when I know exactly what happened.
Well, I think that just based on this, it is worthy of us showing off that one report as well. Okay, so we are talking about the controller settings change history report. And so you go in and choose your controller settings change history report. I'm going to look at the last 30 days for this demo controller. And you can, as soon as you've got the report chosen and detailed, you can either render it in a PDF, Excel, or subscribe to the report if you want it to automatically generate and keep coming to your inbox. Today, we're going to look at a PDF, and it is going to save it, open it, ready to go. So you can see here, looking back, you can see that this controller has been busy. Anything that happened at the controller you see is saved as a controller change. This is a scheduled task that's repeating. But anytime somebody is making changes, you see that in the change event history as well. So you can go in, and I'm sure I'm on here somewhere. But you can see the time and date that changes were made, and the user who was at the helm when the changes were sent. This is why it's important that everyone have their own username and password, right? This is why we talk about the importance of every individual user logging in with their own username. So here on 8/2, when my Site 1 friends logged in and made 42 changes. So we go in and we say, that's way down in the bottom of the report. Event 55, we're going to skip all the way down there so we can see what happened. I think this is the guy right here. Yep. So event 55 of 61 happened 8/2 at 10:27 a.m. And we see the station that was changed, the field that was changed, the value before and the value after. So brings us back to this conversation. When I pull this report, I can see if this was made in error. I can revisit the settings as of 8/2 at 9 a.m., right? I can go in and just pull the correct settings before all of that madness happened using the configurations tool over here. So you want to go in and I say, I want to look at that configuration as of 8/2, right? Well, at 9 a.m. Make sense? I thought that was worth the juice was worth the squeeze on that one.
It saves so much time. Saves so much time.
Saves so much time. And it's good for users to know whether you're using that report or not, that somebody might be. So our friend Brady calls that the neener report, or the tattletale report.
I like that.
So
who done a report. Yeah.
It's definitely a good, another one of my great water managers calls it controller forensics, right? If you're looking back and you're trying to put the magnifying glass, figure out what happened. These are great tools to have and easy to turn the data into action, right? Easy to find what you're looking for in the data and then put everything right very quickly with very few keystrokes and be back on path.
That's awesome.
All right. So anything to build on that before I go back to the demo?
No.
Michelle, good? Okay. So I'm going to come back here. And so we have already looked at how to recall those, right? There's a few other tools. First, I want to talk about how to save them because it's super easy, but it's part of the demo, right? If I go in and I change, let's say I don't know, just went and changed all of my sprinkler heads to spray heads. And I want to save this configuration, right? I don't even have to hit save and send to save this as a configuration. I can go in, make whatever changes that I want, and then I would hit this save configuration button. And you can come up with a name and a description for that configuration. So you can save as many different configurations as you need. So if you have multiple tasks throughout the year where there's a routine in how you have to change the program, do yourself a favor and save a few different configurations. Now this is where I think it opens the door for Joe's conversation, for Joe's example. Joe, can you tell me how you most commonly use this?
Yeah, so in our market, we offer a service to our customers for new installations. And when it's at that transition period from maintenance contractor to, from installing contractor to maintenance contractor, getting turned over to the owner, we offer this service where we'll go through and we'll go through the whole site and we'll get all the station information and we'll learn flows, we'll do everything. And so we call it a 90% program. The rest of it is how green or how brown do you want it after that, right? So you dial it into what you want it to look like, right?
Yeah.
Well, we'll go through and it's quite a bit of work that the customer pays us for to get it set up, to get a great starting point moving forward for the owner and the maintenance contractor.
And can I say unbiasedly, they're lucky to have an expert like yourself to put eyes on that project, to get it started in the right direction, to like the value that they get for that is, again, worth every penny.
Well, and you've got an amazing tool. You've got an amazing tool there. Let's get it set up for success from the beginning. So once we go through and do our site consultation, we'll go through name stations, get all the station parameters, make sure everything's tweaked, make sure thresholds are set, and then we save configuration as site console with our notes, and it is there. So if someone comes on site and we like, oh my gosh, this controller is so screwed up, we're like, you know what? You can go back to that site console and get a good reset.
When I was there, it looked like this, right? This is exactly what I saw with my eyes.
That's right. So it's just an amazing tool, because you may have a new user that has no idea where to even start with programming. They just know that it's not watering right. And we can restore the original site consultation programming and go through that with them. And they are confident going forward that they can make the tweaks as needed to water like they want it to with that starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how often does that actually happen? Like, I know that you save them and that's an extreme value. Do you have evidence that those users, that is a value to your users?
Yes. So we've had quite a few times where you have change of guard, right? You have a new maintenance contractor that's coming on, and the previous maintenance contractor maybe didn't utilize WeatherTRAK to its fullest extent, and they've got stuff on user no AT, or they've got some crazy adjustments that have been made to some stations, who knows why. And in those cases, the owner knows, either they work with me or they themselves have been trained to where they can go through and they say, you know what, we've got this starting point where we're just going to start fresh. We're going to go through, and if there haven't been remodels, and if they can validate that the heads and stuff are still the same on the zones, there's a little bit of work that accompanies that, but it's
somebody's been playing with the wires. That's what I always run into. The sequence is wrong, then everything is wrong.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another day, because that in itself is a real headache. So, but no, it has been a very, very effective tool that way.
That's great. Michelle, that is how Joe uses it, and I think that is the most common example I give, other than the overseating, is to have an expert user, especially that changing of the guard concept that happens on a lot of our accounts, and to be able to consult an expert without having to consult an expert is very valuable. Can you tell me how you use that same tool?
With the saving configurations, it is mostly just helping my contractors who aren't familiar with that tool. When I hear them talk about how long it's taking them to change controllers, I'm like, no, like, save yourselves. And I liked when you did your drop down box, you had it listed overseeding and the flowers and stuff, but something we didn't talk about that I noticed on there was the drought. And where I live, drought is a big deal. And so it's a great tool, because we do have to dial in WeatherTRAK even a little bit more than
that belt just a little bit more.
A little bit more than it naturally does. And so to be able to just go back to that setting is such a big deal. We have over 1,000 controllers. So the amount of time it saves our contractors is extensive.
Yeah, absolutely. And a few minutes saved on each one of those sites is a lot of minutes, right? So it can be a real efficiency tool. The next thing that I want. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just need to say, I Michelle bringing that up about the drought. We actually had a customer here locally that would take, and they would set their drought levels at saved configurations. And so if it's drought level 1, they can go through and they can just revert programming to drought level 1 that they've already put it in programmed, and it's already done. And they're able to address that in the off season, so that in the heat of the summer, they're not having to spend additional time messing with programming, because it's already in place, ready to go. So yeah, that was awesome. Thanks, Michelle.
And what I want to do, there's a part of this tool that you both have used that I have never used. So I am going to demo the compare settings, and I'm going to let you walk me through the example. Joe or Michelle, you both said you have examples of this. So I'm going to lean on you to tell me exactly how you are using this tool. Let me bring up the demo again. Share my screen. All right. So the last part of this feature that we want to highlight is if I go into compare configurations, right? Now I can set two sets of configurations side by side and look at the differences. Joe, how can you use this tool?
So what I've done is with customers as landscapes have changed, they'll go through and they will see if a configuration needs to be tweaked. So they'll look at current programming the way they want it, and then they'll pull up an existing configuration that they want to use in the future, and they'll be able to see, is it compatible, or do I need to save my current programming and save it over the existing configuration and basically give the new configuration new settings. That's how I have used it.
So lots of different things to explore there. Like that's a great example just to talk about the details in the box, right? You can compare what you currently have programmed as an option. You can compare that to any one of your pre-saved configurations and see the difference between your configurations, which is super valuable. Or you can you can compare two different dates, right? What I've done here is I've chosen 8.2 and 8.4. And if I want to pull up a differences report, it comes to you in report form, but you'll be able to see the two side by side and really delve into kind of what is the difference between, in this case, we looked at that one user event that she made 40 changes. And that report has all of the different settings that have been changed in the stations and the value of each configuration side by side so you can compare and contrast.
Michelle, I know you use it. You've used it recently. What were you using it for in your use case?
It was the I used it in conjunction with the controller change history report when I was just trying to figure out what went so wrong with people's changes, like what we were doing before and what we were doing. It just saves a lot of back and forth. You can do the same things without it in different ways, but it's just nice when it's right next to each other. So
we'll look at those side by side. We'll decide which configuration we like. You can delete configurations out of your history so you can keep a nice clean house, if you will, and make sure that anything in there is stuff that you use and you're not saving old configurations. So if you find one outdated, delete it out so you don't have to look at it again. But other than that, like that compare configurations can be a very valuable tool when examining what those configurations are compared to what you have or any date that you can compare. Okay, awesome. And that is the configurations tool. Michelle, does that cover everything that we wanted to talk about?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
You
Awesome.
clicked all the buttons and used all the tools, so I'm gonna go A+ on that.
Clicked all the buttons, looked at all the different possibilities. It is something that for sure only a small group of my users are actually involved in. A small group of users use this tool. When you asked for support materials, you were the first to ever ask for it, and I have clearly never made any. So
Well, thanks for taking the initiative now.
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for spending time with me today. So we want to close out by saying, first of all, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to share with everyone?
No, just keep on keeping on. Proud of everybody for all being here and caring about how you use water. So
keep up the good work. Keep up the water management. Thank you for offering us your perspective today.
Yeah, of course.
And Joe Jackson, that was amazing, man. Thank you so much for making time, and congratulations on all of the growth in the Jackson clan.
Hey, thank you. I wouldn't miss the opportunity to be here. It's like Michelle says, it's good to help people get better at what they do, and to be a part of that is humbling. So thank you, Ben.
It has certainly been my pleasure. And next week next month's edition of Smart Water Wednesdays, we will be looking at, I have a very special edition coming up. Let me share my screen with you on that. On September 27th, I look forward to co-hosting with my buddy Jonathan Heredia from our engineering department. And together we're going to host a very special guest, the sprinkler dude, Justin Fields from Conserva Irrigation. So we're going to get a super tech in here and interview him about diagnosing field issues at the controller and go through some of the troubleshooting tools that we have on the WeatherTRAK. And I think that's it. So until next time, Michelle, again, Joe, thank you. You guys were awesome. I appreciate your time and your perspective, and we will see you next time on Smart Water Wednesdays.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
Hi, thank you.